I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. The Duterte myth has been shattered, according to Tingog party list Representative Jude Acidre. The name once revered and feared no longer holds the same power. He says recent surveys prove the people are tired of their style of politics, of fear, of impunity, of corruption. The lawmaker says it is time to exact accountability. Former President Rodrigo Duterte is now facing investigations over drug war killings. His son, Congressman Pulong Duterte, is also being tagged in the illegal drug trade. And his daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte, is being impeached for failing to explain hundreds of millions in confidential expenses. Today, the Iglesia ni Cristo gathered its members across the country to reject moves to impeach her. But is that enough to save the Dutertes from a political demise? Let's get on point with Tingog party list Representative Jude Acidre. Congressman Acidre, pleasure to have you finally in person.
Maraming
Thank you for your
salamat
time,
po,
sir.
Maraming salamat din po sa pag-imbita.
The INC rally was held today with over 1 million people in attendance. It was a sea of people, sir. What did you think of the rally? What was the intention of the rally?
Well, we'd like to take the explanation of the church about it. It's a rally for peace. Obviously, there are political undertones. But nonetheless, we'd want to keep it at that. It's something that asks us as a people to, as a nation, to check what our motives are or what our positions on certain issues are. But nonetheless, what I would want to see even more, in addition to peace, I hope it does not drown also the call for accountability. As they always say, there's no peace without justice.
So it's clear to you it's peace with some political undertones?
Well, the way it was presented, the way it was, the other calls, example, the choice to express disagreement with the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte speaks a lot of that political undertone.
Yeah. So that's very clear to you?
Well, it's something that's there.
Okay. So seeing the number of people who attended, yung pong sa dami ng mga tao nagpunta.
I would like to respect the position of the Iglesia in this case. No? As I said kanina, I think the message has been sent and received. I would welcome it as a time for us, even those who are not Iglesia, to also ponder upon our positions on certain issues, for us to ask. As kaya nga sinasabi ko, while everybody is welcome to express their wishes for peace, their prayers for peace, I hope it does not also drown the call for accountability.
When you say it's also time for you to ponder on issues, what did this rally make you think of?
Well, it made me think of how many more unspoken voices are yet to be heard about all these issues.
Ano pong ibig niyo sabihin doon?
Siyempre, magandang isipin din at magandang pakinggan na ano pa yung sinasabi ng iba. Alam naman natin kung gaano karami yung Iglesia ni Cristo at meron silang halos mga 3 million na miyembro sa buong Pilipinas. But we also want to know what the others also are thinking. It's an important, ako as a personal exercise in what I do, no, it's really helpful to also listen to others in shaping your own opinion, especially when their opinion is different from yours.
When you say other people's opinions, would you be talking about right now the recent surveys that came out, for example, the one on the Quadcom, where about 61%, I believe, supported the Quadcom hearings, and then to impeach the Vice President, the number was 41%, if I'm not mistaken, agree. 41% agreed to impeach the Vice President. However, sir, let me also remind you that 35% said no. So 41 to 35, hindi ho masyadong magkalayo yung dalawa.
But there's 20% undecided.
Right, 19% ata, no?
19% undecided. So, very interesting yung numbers. Personally, I always take surveys as the state of things for that time being. So it's a good time for us to just study the numbers as it is. Like ngayon, nakikita natin, ganun kalapit. Maybe for us who agree with the impeachment, maybe it's about time to articulate further our position that this has nothing
For
to do.
us who...
I mean, for us who believes that the impeachment is not necessarily the impeachment, the process to take its course, due course. I think it's, what do you call this? I think it's part of what we need to articulate and explain to the people further.
So are you saying, to be clear, that the impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte should already proceed?
Well, there are clear constitutional timelines that we have to observe. Fortunately, unfortunately, we've been on break since the last couple of weeks, no? So we're waiting for the leadership to determine how it pushes through in the coming weeks. But nonetheless, we're certain naman na the leadership will exercise its role, its constitutional function of disposing of the impeachment complaints.
Siguro ganito na lang po yung tanong. Seeing the number of people who attended today in that rally, that prayer for peace, would that somehow influence you one way or another in your decision whether you would or would not impeach Vice President Sara Duterte?
Not necessarily to decide on the outcome of the process, because I would prefer, if it comes to a point that we'll have to vote, I will rather vote on the merits rather than on the political situation. But nonetheless,
But you know the merits already, don't you?
Yes,
okay.
That's why.
So before we go to the
Regardless
merits...
how many people come for a rally or how many show up, I would still decide on the merits
I
of the
see.
case.
So even seeing that, I guess I want to make it clear na nakita niyo kung gaano kadami po yung taong doon. Regardless po sa inyo yon, you can set that
Yes,
aside.
I
That
can
does
set
not
that-
affect your
That does not accept.
decision.
But it also presents us with a challenge of further explaining our position why such a process should continue on.
Okay. So let me go back
Hindi
to...
naman yung ibabaliwala natin kasi pero siguro it's also a challenge for us to explain bakit merong ganitong impeachment process na mangyayari or nangyayari.
How do you intend to do that?
Well, for people to understand that the impeachment is not necessarily to prosecute someone. Remember what impeachments are. They're basically to defend our institutions of state. Yung impeachment, that's why the impeachment, ang result niyan, is not just, there is no criminal liability in an impeachment other than the removal from office and perpetual disqualification. Because by its very nature, yung impeachment, it's directed at protecting the state, protecting institutions of
But
government.
it's protecting the state, but it's a political exercise. How do you reconcile that?
Well,
how do you protect the state, but yet it's known to be a political
Well,
exercise?
necessarily because we're a democratic society, right? Where we have a democratic form of government. And of course, the rule of the majority and all these political concepts are part and parcel of how we proceed. Though, that would be different in a judicial setting, as you would understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were saying that seeing this, the rally or the peace prayer for peace, teaches someone like you, am I summarizing it properly, to be able to make people understand why an impeachment is necessary? Or shall I add this, sir, that the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte is necessary? Are you going on that route, sir?
Or the hold someone accountable through the impeachment process is necessary and definitely a part of our democratic system.
Should she be impeached? Should the Vice President be impeached, sir?
To be fair to the Vice President, it's for the Senate to decide on that. But looking at what has been presented in the complaints and of course with all the findings we have in committee, I think the accountability required of us public servants require it.
So directly, I'm asking you as a congressman, as a party-less congressman, as a member of the House, if you were to vote on this, would you vote to impeach her?
With what I know at the moment, I might.
You might. If somebody went up to you, sir, and said, we're gathering 1/3 signatures, would you sign Would you affix your signature
Not
there,
at
sir?
once. I will have to study it.
Why? I thought you said you knew the merits already.
Because I haven't seen the complaint. Remember, when it goes to the Senate, it will be on a trial. And we have to make sure that in doing so, we present a good case for the trial. It's a different thing.
Understandably, but everything that, well, mostly, most of the complaints that were filed before the House were a product of the investigations and hearings of the House to which you have been actively participating in.
I agree with you.
So you know basically what really, ano yung nakapaloob po
But I
doon.
have to know how it's written, it's presented, and how it's being, let's say, the evidence and the basis provided in the impeachment complaint would be another thing. So we still have to do due diligence.
All right. Timeline. What is happening? Are you, let me ask you, sir, are you okay, comfortable, acceptable ho ba that the 3 complaints are still with the Secretary General? It's still not transmitted to the Speaker?
We are within the acceptable timelines of the Constitution. No? It's less than the 10-day requirement because it has to be session days. So, but we haven't been having sessions since we had our break, no. So, I think there's wisdom in following in the process. Things like impeachment, no matter how you say controversial or how we have to think of the long-term effect of this on our institutions. And I would rather that we take it at the right step at the proper time. A little prudence wouldn't hurt.
Let's clarify that, sir. I hope you don't mind. Because it's, yung tawag nga po doon nakatenga kay Sec Gen, yung 3 complaints, di ho ba? But once he transmits it to the Speaker, this is how I understand it.
Yes.
Doon lang po mag-uumpisa yung sinasabing 10 days. But while he's not transmitted it to the Speaker, day 1 has not started. The count for you...
I asked the section actually about that. No? And what he said was, they're trying to avoid any possible questions with regards surrounding the number of impeachment complaints that can be referred in a year by trying to submit all of this all together.
That's the first time I've heard of that. Is there a maximum? Are you saying there's a maximum number by which somebody can file a complaint about one?
It can be a question later on, especially with the prohibition on the 1-year ban.
But there's a 1-year ban, hindi ho ba? But it needs, kailangan po mag-umpisa muna yung, kumbaga mag-umpisa muna yung metro. Hindi ho ba?
Yes, but nonetheless, I think to be prudent about it, and there's common agreement naman with all the petitioners and all those endorsers, to have it submitted all at once. So that it can be treated and follow the same timelines.
But aren't they also calling on their fellow congressmen already to kind of fast-track this, hindi ho ba?
In fact, I know
kasi
that
na po sila.
Some congressmen actually are asking copies for the impeachment. I did. I asked for the 3 copies and we're doing the comparative table of it. We're doing our study.
Okay. Are there any surprises in the 3 complaints you've seen?
Most of it naman kasi has come from the hearings and we know what the facts are as they stand. No? But iba kasi remember a hearing in the Blue Ribbon or a hearing at the Quadcom, it's not really a judicial proceeding, so to speak. But with the impeachment, the dynamic changes. It has become a quasi-legal, quasi-judicial proceeding. So there has to be more emphasis on for example, the rules of evidence, and those things have to be taken into consideration. And for me, personally, I would rather that we, be more cautious and be more prudent on how such process will take.
Are you saying that with what has been supposedly unearthed in the House Good Government Committee, the equivalent of the Blue Ribbon in the Senate, that there is not enough evidence on betrayal of public trust?
Not necessarily that there is not enough evidence, but the manner by which we present and substantiate these evidences would be of prime importance when we proceed to the determination by the Committee of Justice or eventually in the impeachment trial in the Senate. So we'll have to, how do you say this? We'll have to have a different treatment.
Okay.
of this evidence.
Meron na ho bang lumapit sa inyo para magpamirma dun sa one-third?
Marami na po.
Dun sa one-third? Para
Hindi
diretso na,
hindi ko
na.
alam kung one-third, no? Pero nagpapapirma, nagpapa-endorse ng impeachment. Meron naman ng kumakausap.
And you've never signed anything, obviously,
Obviously, I
because
haven't.
you're not part of any of the three
No, I'm
impeachment
not
complaints.
part
Okay,
of it.
just before we end this discussion on this impeachment, sir, is there enough time? Because you have about 4 weeks left, don't you? Before you adjourn?
Yes, but we can think of different scenarios kasi we are not, I would rather that we do this process because we want exact accountability and not to be limited because I don't think it's reason good enough to say, wala ng oras. So papabayaan na lang natin na gano'n. Diba? I'm sure there are many, how do you call this, approaches that we can do or there can be other options. On
Give
how
me an
to,
option, sir.
Like, for example, the issue whether an impeachment trial actually ends with the end of the 19th Congress and can be moved to the 20th Congress. It's a scenario that I think, personally, I'm not so sure, no? But it happened with Bill Clinton in the US.
Okay. I was actually asking about that, but in reference to the Senate. Not really the House of Reps, because meron pong timeline that is supposed to be followed in the House of Representatives, such as what we were talking about a while ago.
It's the Senate. The problem with that trial is really with the Senate.
With the Senate, because there will be 12 newly elected, not necessarily new senators, because they can be re-elected. What I'm saying is, in the House, the way they say to fast-track it, if you're for impeachment, is really to get 1/3 of the signatures and then it goes straight to the Senate. Is that something you're open to?
Well, that is a possibility. That's an option that we're looking at. Personally, I'm looking at.
You said we are looking at. That's an option we are looking
I
at.
normally use we with every choice.
Okay.
Because I come from a party list and I have to discuss this with my party leaders and everything. So we usually discuss all these things. One thing I've learned in politics is making sure there's the right timing for everything. And it's critical that we never lose sight of that.
We're going to take a very short break. Our discussion with Representative Jude Acidre will continue after the break. Please stay tuned. This is On Point.
Ito po si Father Nono.
Ako po si Father Fiel Pareha.
Ako si Risa Singson Kaupeng.
Kape at pandasal na po tayo. Ito po si Cardinal Chito Tagli.
BNC's Election 2025 special coverage.
Welcome back. You're watching On Point. Still with us, Representative Jude Acidre. There's always also a discussion from the SecGen of a fourth impeachment complaint. Is this true? Is this true or?
Well, I've heard the SecGen talk about it, but we haven't seen anybody come forward to file it. I'd like to believe that there are still many of the impeachment complaints are all coming from the minority, and the ones who handle the committee hearings in good government were from the majority. Of course, we're also waiting for how they will proceed moving forward.
So if there is a fourth impeachment complaint, you're saying it's going to come from the majority?
Well, as of now, that's how you put the equation together.
Okay.
Kasi tatlong minority na, mauubos na sila.
Wala na. Yun na po yun. All right. What happened today in Congress? The position was declared vacant of the Appropriations Committee Chairman, Congressman Elizalde Co. And then it was done abruptly. I mean, the speaker all of a sudden suspended, although we've already said that we showed it on television and we reported that the congressman said this is due to health reasons. But what happened? Why was it so fast?
I was actually surprised. As surprised as many of those in the plenary this afternoon. And out of respect for Congressman Saldeco, I would take his word for it. I've seen him work so hard to get 3 budget passed, making sure that the House is able to carry out its work, especially now as member of the BICAM. I've seen it up close. So I think it wasn't an easy task balancing several interests and, of course, making sure that the president's budget is passed on time. And I wouldn't be surprised that it has taken a toll on his health.
Could there have been a problem with the budget because clearly the president wasn't happy with it?
Well, if there's any issue about the budget, as we obviously have seen in the last couple of weeks, then the only thing that I can surmise is it didn't make any more easy for him, as it did for us members of the BICAM.
Okay, because quite controversial. Of course, the money of DepEd, the 12 billion, 10 billion was supposed to go to computerization. And then here's the question on PhilHealth as well. But because of that, are there supposed to be candidates already that should chair the Committee on Appropriations?
Well, I think you have a very able senior vice chair, Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, in the meanwhile. Especially naman na I don't think there's a need to rock the boat any further, that we're done with our budget-making responsibilities for this Congress. So what we have is a remaining legislation that require the consent of the Committee on Appropriations. So aside from that, wala na masyadong gagawin din ng APRO.
Yung pinaka-importanting task niya,
Yes,
nagawa
tapos
na.
nagawa
So
na.
there's remaining legislation. Let's go to that in a bit, but I need to bring this in. What about investigations and hearings that will continue now that you're back?
What I heard from the speaker made a statement this afternoon. We will continue, of course, with the rice, smuggling and profiteering investigations, Quintocom. And then we'll do the investigation on the review of the franchise of the NGCP. And third, wala akong nakalimutan
yung PhilHealth, sir.
PhilHealth,
Opo,
yes,
nandun din po.
PhilHealth, yes.
And I think that there was another one also. NGCP? You
NGCP,
mentioned
yes,
it already.
yes.
Okay, let's go to PhilHealth. I know that you were also talking about this because a couple of weeks ago. What should be done? Because first of all, again, I will say that, to be clear, Congress did not, or government rather, government did not give PhilHealth subsidy for the indirect contributors. In other words, zero subsidy para dun sa mga indirect contributors. There are only 2 groups here that pay PhilHealth, the direct employees, tayo po, at yung indirect, which are the indigent, the PWD, and the senior citizens. Government says, PhilHealth, you have so much money, so I will not give, government says, I will not give my share of subsidy for the indirect contributors. However, sir, the direct contributors, such as you and me, tayo bayad pa rin. Medyo unfair yon.
Well, 3 things, no? Una, we'll have to take the problem as it is. It's not a question of may pera ba wala. The problem has always been about efficiency. Paano ginagastos ang pera ng PhilHealth? Parang, okay, to put it simply, no? Parang nagpapagrocery tayo, tapos pagtingin mo sa ref mo, punong-puno pa ng pagkain. Bakit tayo bibili? Now, it's a very simplistic way of putting it, but just to illustrate the point, no? So I think with PhilHealth, we really need to question whether are we giving our contributors sufficient case rate amounts, packages. Are we not going to review the contributions? Are we going to streamline payments using an updated digital system to the hospitals? Are we going to correct all these inefficiencies in PhilHealth? Kasi for me, that is a more important question.
Those are very important questions, which I hope you can answer.
Well, I don't have the answers. It's the same
Yung
way.
sa rate packages po,
Like sa
di ba?
rate packages, for example, no, we're supposed to review it every 3 years. The last time we reviewed it was 2013 or 2014?
2013.
13, so that's a period of about 12 years. until this year kung kailan lang natin siya ni-review. And to be honest, if inflationary differential lang ang susundin natin at 3% per year, yung changes, yung bagong increase niyo na 30% or just to cover for the in cost of money, yung inflation
Cost of
lang.
inflation.
So pero it's like this. To really, kaya ang solution ko talaga is to review the Charter of PhilHealth. Why? Because when PhilHealth was created in 1995, it was really designed to be the country's sole medical insurance, state insurance for medical insurance. Now, as a medical insurance company, as I understand, I'm not an expert on that, but the way I understand it, first, its work is basically based on contributions. Its perspective is always actuarial. And then normally, when you go for reimbursement, it's normally adversarial. Diba? Now, when it became the financing arm for the universal healthcare in 2021, that changed the role of PhilHealth. So now every Filipino becomes a member, whether you pay premiums or not. Second, you'll have to pay for the case rates. So there's been a change in dynamics, and I think PhilHealth
What was wrong with it?
unable.
What's the problem that you see since the universal healthcare law
I
came
think
into
because
effect?
we were not able to bridge universal healthcare, the way I understand it, because I wasn't a congressman then, but we're strongly advocating for it. It was meant to be based on primary healthcare. So we keep people from being sick. Now you have a PhilHealth that the point of service is the hospital. So clearly, dun pa lang,
Mali na.
meron na tayong nakikitang problema. So it's good to examine na tama ba na PhilHealth ang gawin nating financing arm for UHC? Kailangan ba talagang pagsamahin sila? Or pwedeng may separate tayo for universal healthcare, for the indigents, may separate tayo dun sa paying. I mean,
Is that something that you're studying?
That's something that we're studying. That's something that we are considering among many other options. Like for example, kung hindi rin naman makakapag-compete, hindi rin magiging competitive ang PhilHealth, bakit hindi natin i-allow ang competition with private HMOs or insurance? So kung ako, worker, at I think this will give me a better benefit, I won't go for PhilHealth anymore.
So you have choices now.
That's something that we're also studying,
Yeah.
diba? Because
But
competition will make it efficient. Basta hindi tayo mawala, Ms. Pinky, parang let's look at the issue as hindi lang yung pera. It's really the efficiency of doing it. There are even ideas like, why don't we tap the private hospitals more since they have a better spread, diba? Instead of PhilHealth will be limited to being just the manager, then the funds will be downloaded to hospitals. Meron ding idea na why don't we focus PhilHealth on government hospitals and then we have private insurance taking care of private hospitals because it works naman for HMOs.
Yeah.
So if you put all of these issues together, clearly the way to go is to review the charter.
How long have you been studying this?
Well, if you notice, we have this issue before with PhilHealth. We've been looking at health financing, health economics as a critic for the last 2 years.
Okay. Because you have a lot of options that you've actually
There are
presented.
a lot of options that can be done, but it's good to ask. That's why we're supporting the calls of the Speaker for an investigation, for us to really look into the numbers. Kasi hindi naman pwedeng, and mind you, ma'am, this is not the first time that we've raised that concern with PhilHealth. Since I became a congressman in 2022, every budget hearing, we raise that point. Why do you have so much money, surplus, or however
Surplus, excess.
and you're investing it when we have not yet reviewed the two things that you're supposed to do. Review the case rates or review the contribution
And
rates.
that fell on deaf ears, I guess, in 2020.
And that's why I think for this particular Congress exercise, for this budget exercise, we had to find ways of, making sure that PhilHealth gets the message.
Yeah, I think especially initially in the beginning, sinabi nga parang tuturuan ng leksyon ang PhilHealth, hindi ho ba?
But I
Kasi
think
ang
the
daming
word
pera.
na tuturuan ng leksyon does not, if you ask me, I'm not very comfortable with it. But I think efficiency is a critical part of budget making. Minsan kasi iniisip ng mga kababayan natin, ang paggawa ng budget parang grocery list. It's not like that. You have to think of whether an agency has the absorptive capacity to actually implement it. And second, the time frame is very important. It's
Yung isang
1
taon.
year. It doesn't mean we don't fund you now. There's not gonna be any funding moving forward.
Kindly answer this question because I failed to ask this question to some of my previous interviews. Yun ho bang hindi nagamit na pera, let's say for example in 2024, let's say the DepEd, hindi nagamit na pera, can they still use that in 2025?
Normally, there is a 2-year life for some projects. Kaya nga, like for example, sa DepEd, ang concern namin because they have a lot, it's the same program that they have not fully implemented. Of course, I have to give credit to the current secretary for having worked his way to improving the situation. But we've seen many undelivered IT equipment, di ba, na hindi pa. Then you're asking for 10 billion. And then we're thinking, sa 10 billion, sinong kumpanya sa buong mundo can deliver it within the right time? So we were simply telling them, can you program it better so that you don't repeat the same process? That you have all these thousands of equipment in storage areas all over the country na nasasayang din yung pera ng bayan.
So basically, yung hindi po nakuhang 10 billion for computerization ni Secretary Angara, meron hong magiging pera, that's my question, from 2024 or 2023?
Well,
meron ho ba?
the President is empowered to transfer amounts in the course of the year for certain expenses.
But what I'm asking is, from the previous budget, would you know if there's anything there that can be tapped for the
I
computerization?
think the ones of the previous budget has already been obligated. And I think what we're looking forward to is the completion of the delivery.
Kailangan kasi obligated para magamit, you're
Yes,
saying,
for
within 2 years.
Yes.
If it's not obligated, it goes
Then
back
it
to the
reverts
National
to the
Treasury. Congressman Jude, Acidre, sir, thank you so much for your time.
Maraming salamat
And look
din.
forward to all the options you have for health insurance. Maraming salamat.
Maraming
muli.
salamat din po.
And that's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.